My son handed me a garbage bag in my own driveway and called it a birthday present. "That's everything you get to take, Dad," Jacoby said. "Happy 50. Behind him, his wife, Alicia Randolph, stood on my porch steps holding a manila folder like a weapon. I understood right then that this wasn't happening in the moment. This had been planned, printed, signed, probably weeks ago. I'm William Pearson, 50 years old as of that morning, 30 years pouring concrete and framing houses in Dayton, Ohio, the last 15 running my own company. I built the house behind Jacoby with my own hands, board by board, the summer Julia was pregnant with him. And on the one morning I let myself believe my family was finally going to show me I mattered, my own son told me to get in my truck and not come back. Julia spent 2 weeks telling me something big was coming for my birthday. Jacoby texted things like, "You're going to remember this one, old man." I let myself believe it. I drove home early. I stopped at the bakery on 3rd and picked up a coffee cake, thinking whatever they had planned, I'd bring something too. I pulled into the driveway at 4 and there were 6 cars along the curb that weren't ours. Neighbors standing on my lawn like they'd been invited to a show. Jacoby was waiting by my truck before I even got the door open. "We need to talk, and it's not the kind you get to walk away from." That's when Alicia stepped forward with the folder, papers I'd never seen, a letter from a lawyer, something about a family trust, a line that made my stomach drop. Incident 15 years prior, cited as grounds for review. I'm not going to pretend I'm innocent in this story. 15 years ago, I got behind the wheel after too many beers with Jacoby in the back seat. I hit a guardrail on Route 4. Nobody died. Nobody even went to the hospital. But my 12-year-old son rode home in an ambulance that came from me, and I spent a weekend in a holding cell, and I haven't touched a drink since. 15 years sober. 15 years showing up early and leaving late. I thought that counted for something. Jacoby didn't think 15 years counted for anything. "You don't get to work hard and act like that night never happened," he said, in front of Alicia, in front of the neighbors, in front of his own mother, who stood on the porch with her arms wrapped around herself and didn't say one word in my defense. 50 years old and you still don't understand what you cost this family. One of the neighbors, a guy named Pete, who I've waved to for a decade, actually laughed. Not loud, just a breath through his nose like he'd been let in on something. Jacoby kept going, telling anyone close enough to hear that I'd been having episodes, that I'd been forgetting things at the shop, that the family had concerns about my stability they'd been sitting on for months. None of it was true, but he said it slow and calm, the way you talk about somebody who can't hear you, and I watched 3 of my neighbors nod along like it made sense. I looked for Samuel in the crowd, my younger boy, 22, out at a diesel mechanics program in Indiana. He wasn't there. Nobody had called him. I'd find out later that was on purpose. I looked at Julia, 26 years married to that woman, and she looked at the ground instead of at me. "Get in your truck. Take the bag. That's what's yours now." I opened it in front of everyone. My work boots, a photo of my father, my 15 sobriety chip. Nothing else. Not my tools, not my clothes, not 30 years of a life built in that house. Alicia had the nerve to say, "We kept the important things, William," like she was doing me a favor. I didn't fight him in front of the neighbors. Some part of me still believed this was a misunderstanding I could fix once everyone calmed down. I backed out of my own driveway on my 50th birthday with a garbage bag on the passenger seat and nowhere I was supposed to go. I made it 4 blocks before my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. "Ask your son why the accident report got changed last month." I sat at that stop sign a long time, engine running, garbage bag beside me, staring at 11 words that told me everything I thought I understood about that folder, about that review, about my own son, was wrong in a way I hadn't even considered. If you've ever had the people who were supposed to love you turn your worst night into a weapon against you, stay with me, because this one gets worse before it gets better. Hit subscribe so you don't miss Chapter 2, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been punished for something you already paid for? I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I drove to Davian's. Davian Cole ran my framing crew for 12 years before I made him foreman, and he's about the only person outside my own family I'd call at midnight. He didn't ask a single question when I showed up at his place off Wilmington Pike holding a garbage bag like it was luggage. He just stepped back from the door and let me in. "Sit down before you fall down," he said, and put coffee in front of me instead of a beer, because he's known me long enough to know better than to offer that. I told him everything. The folder, the neighbor standing there like an audience, the line about my accident being grounds for review. Davian's face didn't move until I got to the text message. Then he took the phone out my hand and read it twice. "Somebody's telling you the story you got sold today isn't the real one," he said. "Question is who and why they're too scared to put a name on it." I need to explain something here, because it's the part that makes what happened legally possible instead of just cruel. 15 years ago, after the accident, Julia's cousin is a lawyer, and he told the both of us that if I wanted the marriage and the family to survive what I'd done, I needed to prove it in a way words couldn't. So we put things in writing. We set up a family trust. The house went in, 40% of the company went in. Julia was named trustee, and because I wasn't thinking about anything except showing my family I wouldn't destroy us a second time, I agreed that Jacoby would become co-trustee automatically the day he turned 25. No renewed approval, no second look at whether it still made sense. He turned 25 8 months ago. I signed my own house away trying to prove I'd become a better man, and it never occurred to me the proof would end up loaded and pointed back at me. I texted Samuel that night, just, "Can you talk?" The 3 dots came up, then they went away. No answer. I told myself he was probably at work. I slept about 2 hours on Davian's couch, if you can call it sleeping. Mostly I lay there running the driveway back in my head, trying to find the exact second where I could have said something different and changed how it ended. There wasn't one. It had already been decided before I pulled in. Around 7, I drove myself over to the shop. 30 years of Pearson construction, and I still keep a spare set of boots and a filing box of old job photos in the back office, the kind of stuff you don't think about until somebody takes it from you. My key didn't turn. Somebody had rekeyed the door overnight. Rosa was already inside. She's run our front office for 9 years, and she came to the glass looking like she didn't want to be the one standing there. "Bill, I'm sorry. Jacoby called last night. He said not to let you take anything out of the building until the lawyers sort out what's his and what's yours." "It's my building, Rosa." "I know," she said, and she meant it, but she didn't unlock the door either. 30 years, and I was standing on the sidewalk asking a woman I hired for permission to walk into my own office. Davian picked me up from the curb 20 minutes later and didn't say anything about it, which was its own kind of kindness. Instead, he drove me to the county recorder's office before his shift because I wanted to see the accident file with my own eyes instead of trusting a stranger's text. The clerk who pulled it, a woman named Carla who I've known since Jacoby was in diapers, printed 2 pages instead of 1. "There's your original report from 15 years ago, and there's a supplemental amendment filed on it 3 months back. Somebody requested the file be reopened and reviewed." "Reopened by who?" She turned the second page around so I could read it myself. "Requesting party, Julia A. Pearson. Not Jacoby, not Alicia, Julia. Filed 3 months before my birthday, 3 months before any folder, 3 months before I had any idea my own wife had gone looking for a 15-year-old mistake and asked the county to pull it back out into the light." Davian read it over my shoulder and didn't say a word for a long time. Then he said the only thing there was to say. "Bill, she started this before he did." I didn't say anything back. I just kept staring at her name printed on county letterhead, 3 months old, and thinking about every night I'd sat across from Julia at our own kitchen table asking if we were okay, and every time she'd told me we were fine. Davian knew a lawyer who didn't owe my family anything, and that's exactly what I needed. Her name was Diane Kessler, third floor of an office building on Main Street downtown, the kind of place with a metal detector at the entrance because it shares a building with a bail bondsman. I sat in her waiting room in the same clothes I'd worn since my birthday, unshaven, smelling like Davian's couch, and I remember thinking that if a stranger walked past me right then, they might believe what my son had been telling the neighbors. I laid everything out on her desk anyway. The folder Alicia handed me in the driveway, the printout Carla gave me at the recorder's office with Julia's name on it. Diane read for almost 15 minutes without saying a word, and when she finally looked up, she didn't look at me the way people had been looking at me for 2 days. "First thing you need to hear," she said, "is that folder your daughter-in-law was waving around in your driveway doesn't do what she wants you to think it does. A family trust review clause doesn't let anybody put you out of your own house, not without a judge signing off on incapacity first. So none of it was real? The eviction was theater," she said. "This part is real." She turned her laptop around. A probate court filing, dated 4 days earlier, a petition for emergency guardianship, requesting the court find me unable to manage my own affairs, citing the reopened accident file, and, she said, 3 sworn witness statements describing concerning behavioral changes over the past year. "Hearings in 5 days, Diane said. If a judge grants even a temporary order before you get to respond, Jacoby steps in as your guardian on the spot. Trust, house, company, all of it, under his control until you prove otherwise in court. That's the play, not the driveway. This." I asked her the only thing that mattered. "Whose name is on those statements?" She scrolled. "First one's a physician, someone named Dr. Okafa. We'll need to find out if he ever actually examined you. Second one's Alicia herself. Third one's," she turned the screen fully toward me, "Peter Ausworth, my neighbor, Pete. The same Pete who's waved at me every morning for 10 years. The same Pete who stood on my lawn 2 nights ago and laughed through his nose while my son called me unstable in front of 6 other people." "You know him?" Diane asked. "Pete's lived across the street since Jacoby was in grade school. Then somebody got to him, or paid him, or scared him," she said. "People don't sign sworn statements about neighbors they've never had a problem with unless there's a reason we haven't found yet." Davian, who'd been quiet in the corner chair the whole meeting, finally spoke. "Pete's had that fence dispute with the county for 2 years, encroaching on the easement. Man's been fighting a fine he can't afford." Diane wrote that down without comment, which told me she already had a theory forming she wasn't ready to say out loud yet. "Here's where we are," she said. "I can file to contest the petition and request a full evaluation on your terms with your own doctor, which buys us time and looks better in front of a judge than you refusing outright. But 5 days isn't much. I need everything you can get me on Alicia. Financials, phone records if you can get them legally, anything showing motive beyond, quote, concern for your well-being. Judges want to see who benefits." She works for a wealth management firm downtown. Randolph's been talking around the shop for months about how the company's sitting on land near the interstate that a developer wants bad. Wouldn't shock me if that's the real prize. Diane looked at me. 50 years old, sober 15 years, and somebody's about to tell a judge you're not fit to run your own life. You understand that if we lose this hearing, it isn't a bad birthday anymore. It's permanent. I walked out of that office with 5 days on the clock and a single name sitting in my chest like a stone. Pete. Somebody I'd trusted enough to leave a spare key with once, on my own lawn, ready to swear in a courtroom that I'd become someone I'm not. I called Samuel again from the parking lot, straight to voicemail this time. I didn't leave a message. I was starting to run out of people I could still call family without qualifying it. Davian looked over at me before he started the truck. "What are you thinking?" I'm thinking Pete's home from the plant by 5 every day, and I'm thinking I need to know what they've got on him before Friday, because right now he's the only piece of this I can still reach without a subpoena. Davian didn't argue. He just pulled out of the lot and pointed us back toward my old street, the one I wasn't supposed to set foot on anymore. Pete's porch light was on before we even parked, which told me he'd been watching for headlights since the hearing got filed. He came out in his socks, no shoes, like a man who wasn't planning on this conversation lasting long. "Bill, I don't think I know about the affidavit, Pete." His face did the thing a man's face does when the lie he's been carrying finally gets too heavy to hold up by himself. He looked back at his own front door, then at Davian standing by the truck, then at me. "She said it was just a formality," he said. "Alicia, she said the doctor was never even going to have to examine you, that it wouldn't go anywhere, that it was just paperwork to speed up some family trust thing. And the fence, that's the part that broke him." He sat down hard on his own porch step. "County's been on me 2 years about the easement, $10,000 fine if it goes to a hearing. Alicia came by in March, said she worked with people at the county, said she could make it disappear if I just signed a statement saying I'd noticed some changes in you. I didn't think it'd be used the way it's being used. I swear to God I didn't. You stood on my lawn and laughed while my own son called me unstable. I know. He wouldn't look up. I felt sick about it since. I didn't get the chance to say anything else because that's when a car I didn't recognize pulled up behind Davian's truck too fast, and Samuel got out of it before it had fully stopped. I hadn't seen my younger boy in 4 months. He looked thinner than I remembered, and scared in a way 22-year-olds try not to look in front of their fathers. "Dad," his voice cracked on the one word. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this until yesterday." "Where'd you hear it?" "Mom's sister called me. Aunt Lindsay thought I already knew, thought somebody had told me. When she said guardianship hearing, I about drove off the road." He was talking fast now, the words tripping over each other. "I called Jacoby. He wouldn't tell me anything real, just kept saying it's complicated, it's for the best, you'll understand later. So I logged into the old family cloud account, the one we all shared for photos when I was in high school. Jacoby never took himself off it. I found something, Dad. I printed it before he figures out I was in there." He handed me a folded stack of paper, shaking. It was a letter of intent. Cornerstone Development Group, a firm out of Columbus, offering to purchase the 11 acres Pearson Construction owns off Route 4, the land I'd been sitting on for a decade waiting for the market to catch up. Signed by Jacoby, dated 11 days before my birthday, 11 days before the folder, 11 days before the garbage bag, 11 days before any of it. "There's a deadline clause," Samuel said, pointing halfway down the second page, his finger not quite steady. "Says the offer expires if the trust ownership isn't consolidated under a single decision-maker within 30 days of signing." I did the math, standing right there on Pete's porch. 30 days from that signature date put the deadline 6 days from now, 1 day after my competency hearing. Pete was still sitting on his step, staring at all of us like he was only now understanding the size of what he'd signed his name to. "Bill, I don't think that's not a family disagreement. That's a business deal with a clock on it." Samuel looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd become William Pearson, garbage bag man, unstable father, invisible for 30 years of showing up, somebody in my family looked at me like they still knew exactly who I was. "I'll testify," he said. "Whatever they need me to say in court, I'll say it. I'm done staying out of it." Davian was already pulling his phone out to call Diane. I looked down at Jacoby's signature on that page, at the date that made a liar out of every word my son said to me in that driveway, and I understood for the first time that this had never been about a mistake I made 15 years ago. It was never about me at all. It was about 11 acres on Route 4 and a clock that ran out one day after they planned to have me declared unfit to stop it. The Montgomery County Probate Court doesn't look like much from the outside. Beige brick, a metal detector, a hallway that smells like burnt coffee. I'd built houses bigger than the whole building. I sat outside courtroom 4B on a bench with Davian on one side and Samuel on the other, and for the first time in 6 days, I wasn't the only Pearson on my side of the hallway. Jacoby and Alicia came in together, her hand on his arm, both of them dressed like they were going to a business meeting instead of a hearing about whether I could still run my own life. Julia came in behind them, alone, and she didn't sit with either side. She stood in the doorway for a second, like she wasn't sure which bench belonged to her anymore. Diane went first. She didn't raise her voice once. She laid the affidavits on the table one at a time. Dr. Okafor, she told the judge, has confirmed in a sworn statement of his own that he has never met, examined, or corresponded with Mr. Pearson. His signature on this document was not authorized. The judge, a woman named Harmon, who looked like she'd heard every excuse a courtroom could offer, made a note and didn't look up. Then Diane called Pete. He walked up in a collared shirt he clearly didn't own many of, and he told the truth this time, out loud, on the record, with Alicia sitting 15 feet away. The fence dispute, the $10,000 fine, Alicia's visit in March, the statement he signed believing it was paperwork, not testimony that could take a man's home. I lied, Pete said, plain as that. I've known Bill Pearson 20 years, and none of what I signed was true. I watched Alicia's face while he said it. She didn't flinch. That told me more than anything Pete said. Then Diane put the letter of intent on the screen. Cornerstone Development Group, 11 acres off Route 4. Jacoby's signature, dated 11 days before my birthday, with the 30-day consolidation clause highlighted in yellow. Your Honor, Diane said, this petition was filed one day before a real estate deadline worth, by our estimate, upward of $2 million. We'd ask the court to consider whether Mr. Pearson's fitness was ever actually the concern here. Judge Harmon looked at Jacoby for a long moment. Mr. Pearson, she said, meaning him, not me, would you like to explain the timing on this document? Jacoby opened his mouth and nothing useful came out of it. Alicia leaned over and whispered something to him, and for once he didn't listen to her. He just sat there. That's when Julia stood up from the back row. Nobody had called her. She just stood, and her voice shook the way it hadn't once in my driveway 6 days earlier. I didn't know about the land, she said. I want that on the record. I reopened that file because I've spent 15 years scared of the night that accident happened, and Alicia told me getting Bill evaluated was the only way to finally know if I was safe. I believed her. I didn't know about any development deal. I didn't know about any of this. I don't know if that's the whole truth. I don't know if I'll ever fully know. But I watched her say it, and I watched something in her break the same way something in Pete broke, and for the first time in a week, I didn't feel like I was the only person in that building who'd been used. Judge Harmon didn't take long after that. She denied the petition outright, called the medical affidavit presumptively fraudulent, and referred the land transaction and the notarized statements to the county prosecutor's office for review. She looked at me directly before she stood. Mr. Pearson, you're free to go home. I didn't cry in that courtroom. I'd done enough of that on Davian's couch already. I walked out into the hallway, and Samuel grabbed me in a hug so hard it knocked the wind out of me, and over his shoulder, I watched Jacoby and Alicia leave through a different door without looking back once. Julia caught me by the elevator. I know sorry doesn't fix 6 days, Bill, she said, or 15 years. No, it doesn't. I didn't tell her it was over between us right there in that hallway, but we both already knew it was, in the way you know a board's cracked before it actually snaps. 3 weeks later, I moved back into the house I built. Rosa handed me my keys back without a word, just a hug that lasted longer than either of us expected. Pete's been by twice to help me clear brush off the property line, which is about as much penance as a man like that knows how to offer. And I've let him, because I'm 50 years old, and I've learned there's a difference between forgiving somebody and pretending nothing happened. Samuel comes by most weekends now. Jacoby hasn't called once. I built that house with my own hands the summer my son was born, not knowing it would take me 30 years and a garbage bag to find out exactly who was standing on the lawn when I needed them and who wasn't.